Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our event today. And today our speaker is Athena Demos. And Athena Demos is a co-founder and producer, chief community and culture officer in BCR, Big Rock Creative. Athena co-founded Big Rock Creative, a successful XR content creation company that won a lot of VR awards during these years. And she also had 20 years of experience producing iconic events. She also founded the LA League of Arts, a 501c3 organization that created a foster community by facilitating the creative process through the public art. And also right now she, like in October 2020, she also produced a 360 VR documentary in Mexico, which kind of featuring a family kind of doing or celebrating their most holy holiday, Dia de los Muertos. Yeah, I'm trying to say some Spanish, but yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you that she is our speaker, and I will pass the baton for Athena. Yeah, go ahead.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm just gonna share my, I have to do it like this, right? Trying to share, there we go. Can everyone see my screen? Perfect.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Dominique. I really appreciate this invitation to come and talk about the metaverse. It's quite the word, and a lot of people are trying to define it right now. So that's one of the things that I hope to help with. So why will it not advance? There we go. So what is the metaverse? Well, the first thing I want to point out is that it's not capitalized. The metaverse isn't a capitalized word, much like the internet is not, it's just the internet. It's the metaverse. It's that next thing. But what we can all agree is that we can feel the excitement of the metaverse bubbling up into existence before our very eyes. So the metaverse is a word that was coined in a fictional novel by Neil Stephenson in 1992's Snow Crash, which, by the way, is also where we get the word avatar. We hear about the metaverse in stories like The Matrix or Ready Player One, where they depict a dystopian future where we were all unknowingly trapped inside of the metaverse or escaping into one. My hope is that we can achieve the metaverse without the dystopian future. So as we blissfully go into the metaverse on glittery rainbows, let us keep one foot firmly connected to our glorious planet and take care of her precious beauty and nutritious gifts. This, by the way, is Iguazu Falls in Argentina. And if you've never been, it's a phenomenal place to see. So, what is the metaverse? Really, what is it? So, a lot of people have said what they believe the metaverse to be. But one quote in particular I really, really like. The metaverse is a vision that spans many companies, the whole industry. You can think about it as a successor to the mobile internet, and it's certainly not something that any one company is going to build. Does anybody know who said that? You can put it in the chat.
No.
No, you don't know who said that?
Said it, but they probably did it.
Yeah, this is probably, this is one that's going to be like, most people are like, no, really? Because Mark Zuckerberg said it. And everybody thinks that they're trying to control the metaverse by changing their name. But even he realizes that he can't do it alone. Some people have said that what we built with BRCvr was the metaverse. But in my mind, Burning Man's always been a type of metaverse. I mean, think of it this way. You have this expanse, this blank, empty playa that's our connected zone. And within it, there are groups and communities and artist collectives that build theme camps and art installations and art cars. And you go into the general space, and then you go into a theme camp and you have that experience. And then you come back into the playa and you go on an art car and you have that experience. And all of that interconnectivity is the metaverse of Burning Man. And so when we created BRCvr, it was very much that same, we created what we knew. And then people were like, oh my God, you created the metaverse. We're like, well, it's existed for 35 years. And it formed organically with the help of a little foundational organization and a lot of creative community involvement. This is one of the ways that we run BRCvr. We're all on a collective video call, Zoom call, in our VR headsets, in different worlds, in BRCvr. And if you look at the top row, you'll see a whole bunch of avatars watching the fire spinners live the night of the burn, as we're on the digital playa, as we're on a Zoom call, watching everyone, making sure all the instances are working. And we're all in different places. Maybe that's the metaverse. What I can say is that the metaverse is a promise of a technological future we can all belong to as a community, connected together. Whoop. But we can't keep our earbuds in. So there's no universally accepted definition of the metaverse, but there was no definition of the internet, of what it ultimately became at the beginning. So maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe it's not what is the metaverse? Maybe it's how. How is the metaverse created? So what we can do, and all we can do, is agree with intention on a set of attributes we hope will exist in the end result and work towards that. Much like the principles of Burning Man.
I think we have to start from principles, right? Most of the industry goes wrong when companies focus just on their interests and don't think about the full reciprocity of how do I want this to work as a consumer? How do I want this to work as Epic? How do I want this to work as a partner of Epic or a participant in in this new medium? I think we have to look at it from all perspectives and lay out basic foundational principles as opposed to just doing. I think the popular thing now for tech companies is to just do whatever that you think you can get away with. And that doesn't really cut it.
Thanks, Tim. I couldn't agree more. So much like the principles of Burning Man are the foundational fabric that provide an inspiring place for creative communities to thrive on, we could have them in the metaverse. So I regularly host discussions about the principles of Burning Man in Los Angeles, in the Black Rock Desert, and in VR. In fact, on Saturday at 10 a.m. On the 29th, I will be hosting one in Altspace. And you can write down the code PRQ919. And if you come in at 10 a.m. Pacific time on the 29th, I will be there leading a discussion about bringing the principles of Burning Man into the metaverse. But I'm going to go over some of that here. But before I do, how many people have been to Burning Man, or a regional, or some sort of Burning Man event, or consider themselves a burner? Go ahead and put in the chat if you've been to any event. If you've been to the Black Rock Desert, put the first year that you've gone. If you've been to a regional event, maybe name the regional event, and go ahead and put that in the chat. No? No one?
Wow.
Oh, yay, 1996, old school. My first year was 99. Not that it's a competition. My business partner, Doug, he was 98, going way back to the 90s. And there's distinct times in Burning Man history. You have the people that were there in the 90s. You have the people that were there in the early 2000s, 2000 to 2004. That was a very specific time. 2012 was when the main event started selling out. 2004 is when the regional network started taking off, and there were lots of regional events branching out all over the world. We're in 300, we have 300 regional contacts in 22 different countries in 44 states. It's really an amazing network, metaverse. So what I found most interesting is that as I was reaching materials about the metaverse, I came across something that was seemingly familiar, but presented in a whole new way. Matthew Ball outlined 7 core attributes to describe the metaverse and not define it. Much like the principles of Burning Man describe what it means to be a burner, but doesn't define us. So I'm going to go over those, and I'm going to show how they connect. And I'm going to point some of the more important things out. The first one that Matthew outlined was that it needs to be persistent. That is to say that it never resets or pauses or ends. There's no end of game. You can't stop it and come back to the same place. It's life. It continues indefinitely. The metaverse needs to be persistent so the community can participate in it. Now, participation, the principle says that our community is committed to a radically participatory ethic, that participation leads to transformational change, and we achieve being through doing. Now, what's interesting about achieving being through doing is that all the principles of Burning Man are ways that we do, and we say this is how we burn. The attributes, the 7 core attributes, are states of being. So we can achieve being through doing. We can achieve the metaverse through doing the principles. So the next one says that we need to be synchronous and live. Well, there'll be pre-scheduled events, there'll be self-contained events that will happen just as they do in real life. But the metaverse will be a living experience that exists consistently for everyone in real time. In real time. That's immediacy. Oops. The immediate experience is in many ways the most important touchstone value in our culture. Be here now. He also said that it should be without any cap to concurrent users, while also providing each user with an individual sense of presence. Everyone can be a part of the metaverse and participate in a specific event, place, and activity together at the same time with individual agency. We are in control, but we need to be included. Radical inclusivity, we say as burners that anyone can be part of our community. We welcome and respect the stranger. There are no prerequisites to exist for participation in our community. That it can be a fully functioning economy. Individuals and businesses will be able to create, own, invest, sell, and be rewarded for an incredibly wide range of work that produces value and that is recognized by others. In the Burning Man community, in our economy, we have 2 principles. We have gifting and decommodification. Now, gifting says that our community is devoted to acts of giving. The value of a gift is unconditional, and that gifting does not contemplate a return or exchange for something of equal value. We also say decommodification preserves the purity of gifting, because in order to preserve that spirit of gifting, our community seeks to create social environments that are unmediated by commercial sponsorships, transactions, and advertising, that constant bombardment of propaganda. We stand ready to protect our culture from such exploitation. We resist the substitution of consumption for participatory experience. Basically, don't sell your soul for the expectation of reciprocity. Now, how can decommodification exist in a space where, we have to all make money? I believe in decommodified spaces, places in which communities can get together, give each other gifts, gifts of connection, gifts of interactivity, places like public parks, national parks. No advertisement is allowed. You can't buy or sell anything, but you come together to be. And we need those spaces of being in order to have the transformational change from doing. He also said that it will be an experience that spans both digital and physical worlds. The metaverse will span both physical and digital worlds, private and public networks and experiences, open and closed platforms. The metaverse isn't just this VR platform or that AR platform or that XR platform. It's how these platforms connect to the physical world, how we as physical beings connect to the virtual worlds. That's the metaverse. And that connects to leaving no trace, because our community respects the environment, physical and digital. This experience spans both the digital, physical, and therefore we need to respect them both. And if you notice, I put in italics the ing of leaving. It's not leave no trace, it's leaving no trace, because all of these are doing, states of doing, actively leaving no trace. In the digital world, it's how we present ourselves in our avatars. What is that trace that we're leaving on the metaverse? What is the gift that we are giving? It will offer unprecedented interoperability of data, digital assets, items, content, and so on across each of these experiences. So we don't have a metaverse yet because we do not have interoperability. What we actually have is a multiverse. A multiverse is a universe of various different verses, somewhat connected together, but not without actual crossover. So we have all these walled gardens, all these various different platforms, and you have to leave one to go to the next one through various different app stores or on browsers, but we can't actually jump from one to the other and take our assets with us. So we're working on that. And the only way it'll happen is through grand communal effort. Communal effort is one of our principles, and our community values creative cooperation and collaboration. And the metaverse needs all of us to put forth the greatest communal effort to create something with a strong foundational fabric. And the seventh attribute that Matthew Ball lined out is that it'll be populated by content and experiences created and operated by an incredibly wide range of contributors, some of whom are independent individuals, while others might be informally organized groups or commercially focused enterprises. A lot like Burning Man, individual artists, collective groups, theme camps, art cars that are radically self-reliant and radically self-expressive. So radical self-reliance says that our community encourages the individual to discover and exercise and rely on their inner resources. You need to create a place where the community is encouraged to be self-reliant. And self-expression arises from the unique gifts of the individual or the collective. No one other than the individual or the collaborating group can determine the content. It is offered as a gift to others. And in this spirit, the giver respects the rights and liberties of the recipient. In other words, give them the tools and the freedom to create. Now, there's one more in the 10 principles that isn't connecting to the 7 core attributes, and that's civic responsibility. But civic responsibility is actually the thing that holds them all, because it's all of humankind. It is the civic responsibility to all of humankind who will be participating in the metaverse, the digital and the physical. And we can consciously create the metaverse to uplift society, to evolve into humanity. Human beings coming together with compassion and kindness for the greater good. And I think the principles of Burning Man make it much easier to describe what it means to be a humane being in the metaverse. And that sounds like a pretty cool metaverse that we can all belong to and participate in. Thanks. So does anybody have any questions or something they'd like to discuss or bring up? Was there any part of that that you were like, curious about that?
How might we achieve the interoperability?
That is going to take all the companies that have their walled gardens to drill holes in the walls and build bridges.
Do you see anything like that so far?
Not really.
Okay.
I hear a lot of people talking about it. I think interoperability and the need for it and the buzzword around the metaverse is so new, and building something like this takes time. It also is going to take a lot of legal paperwork.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to put holes in their walled gardens because they want to protect their server space. They want to be able to control, like there's very few platforms that allow user-generated content. Yeah. There's VRChat, there's Altspace, Neos kind of does. There's some new ones that are coming out that kind of do, but they really don't, like Dream. And most of the time, if you're going to be on the enterprise version of a platform, you give them your Unity package or your Unreal package, and they convert it and they upload it for you. And it doesn't give you autonomy. So until we can trust the users, until the platforms can trust the users, and APIs are built that create connectivity, there's a little bit. I have been part of a platform where you started out on a WebXR version and were able to port into a version of Engage that the event was being done across both. I've seen the same thing happen across WebXR and Virbela, but it's very difficult, few and far between, and it comes out of privacy and security. So there's a lot of legal backend that I really believe needs to happen. Altspace VR is on the Microsoft servers, and they're very protective for good reason, to make sure that everybody's data is protected. They don't want people to hack into the backend. And when you start building these bridges, you're also building vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
But if you think of a relationship, just like a human relationship between another person, you have to let down your guard and be in that vulnerable space with that person in order for the true magic to happen. That is actually how the metaverse is going to happen. We need to build relationships across these different walled gardens in order for them to safely build a platform, safely build a bridge that we can walk across and take our assets with us. They might slightly change when we get to the other side, but that crossover, I don't know any other way it's going to happen. Or someone needs to build the decommodified space that is open for all, that all the platforms bridge to. And so you use that as your connectivity, your public park, but it's not built yet. And us having the metaverse, I think, is like 5, 8 years out, maybe 10 years out before we
Yeah.
actually have a metaverse.
Yeah. I'm an engineer, and I have been involved a lot with intellectual property issues. And I just wonder if, like what you say, building this sort of overall environment into which everything can fit, I just wonder if we can work on sort of a connector mechanism, both technologically and legally, that will fill all these roles. It's going to be a little bit tricky, I think, but it's an interesting idea.
There needs to be a complete willingness across all the various companies in order to do this. And I think we're finally at that point. We're at that precipice, that crossover, where we have this opportunity. I am super excited about this, which is why I keep talking about it at as many events as I possibly can, because I think we're there. This is it. This is the beginning. And I think hearing Mark Zuckerberg say it can't be one company, and Tim Sweeney say we need to build this with foundational fabric, and having companies like Google and Microsoft and Meta, who I can't get past calling them Facebook, all coming to a table and having a discussion. I wish it was a more public discussion and not a private discussion. I would love to be part of that discussion. But the fact that the talking is happening and the conversations are happening means that this can actually occur. But until these walled gardens open up portals where a bridge can occur, we will not have a true metaverse. I'm super excited about the fact that we can.
There's actually some bridge happening. Have you, Jim, heard of OpenXR?
Yeah.
They're building APIs. So for interoperability between devices, they have a 1.0 spec. So you
can build the APIs, but if the companies don't agree to integrate them, they don't do anything.
What it makes me think of is the open source licensing that's available for many things right now. Maybe there's a form of that open source licensing that could serve as a connector between these different things. And you might have some open source software as well that's connecting. Might be.
I agree. It's entirely possible. There needs to be a willingness to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we're finally at that point where the willingness is there. Everyone has always built walled gardens. When you build any platform, you build your own platform, and somebody needs to access it through an app or through a browser. But you build an avatar and you set up a name and a username and a password, and it's separate to that. And it's its own entity and its own thing. And we've always done it that way, and it's worked and it's been fine. This need to have connectivity is only about a year old.
My guess is that what we're going to work towards is sort of an open source type of standard. And the different companies like Meta and so forth will have to sort of come to the table with proposals for what should be included in that standard. And these companies will have to get together, and like as with a lot of other standards, they'll have to get together and, okay, we all agree this is part of the standard that we're going to need, and sort of build it from there. That's probably how it's going to work.
Yeah, there's an organization in Washington, D.C. called the XRA, the XR Association. And if you go on their website and you join their mailing list, it's all the big companies that are part of it. And that's the conversation that they're having.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I would again suggest the OpenXR. It has all the big names there, and it's about the digital API between headsets, for example. So.
Yeah, so that would
be. But how do we get VR chat and Altspace to talk to each other?
Right, it's going to be related, right? That those things are going to be coming in. Right now, it's hardware.
At some point, yeah. And even within the multi-user games, those are still communities. Fortnite, which doesn't exist on the headset and kind of can't. At least not, okay, PC VR and Steam for sure. But if you're talking about the Oculus Quest, which is the majority headset at this point, and the graphics aren't there. So we have a whole bunch of levels and things that need to come up, and they all are. That's why I keep saying 5 to 10 years, because we're going to get better and better headsets at a lower and lower price range. We're going to get more optimization for mobile, which will allow that to happen. We're going to get more interoperability. People are starting to now build platforms from scratch that have interoperability built in. So the APIs are there already built in. And that way, when another platform comes to them, they're like, here's our bridge. There you go. But nobody's ever thought of that before. So it wasn't built in. And so now everybody's backpedaling and going, okay, so where do we put this bridge in?
Yeah.
We can't put it over here because of this privacy reason, and we can put it over here, but then we're going to get hackers. So it's tricky. It's coming. And I agree. OpenXR is way that we're connecting the headsets, and but it's getting the big companies that already have the platforms to open their platforms.
I think an interesting idea is that if you're developing in this space, you may want to develop in a way that's platform agnostic if you can. There was an interesting talk at AWE about this, and there's a trend to develop for one particular platform, like Oculus Quest, for example. But if you can easily develop for additional platforms as well, then that can be really handy. There's a product called Echo 3D, which allows you to use a lot of different platforms. And that seems like sort of an interesting way of doing things. It seems like you could develop something, for example, using Echo 3D and have it be usable from the cloud on a bunch of different platforms. So that might be an interesting approach.
I was even,
well, with Big Rock, go ahead.
I was even thinking, all the cool haptic feedback stuff. I want to be able to ultimately go to Walmart and buy some kind of toy gun that I can integrate in my PSVR, so it's modeled already, right? I get my kickback when I pull the trigger. So there needs to be some that goes back into hardware integration, but I want to be able to shop anywhere for haptic feedback devices.
I think it's going to be automatically built into everything at some point. Like everything that's going to connect to the metaverse, much like you wouldn't build any hardware right now that connects to your phone without Bluetooth. And it used to be that Bluetooth was this extra thing. And you bought things that were Bluetooth, but a lot of things were hardwired. And now, why would you buy anything that's not Bluetooth? You need the wireless connectivity. I had a headset, my first headset had no Bluetooth. Now I have the Oculus Quest, the Bluetooth. You don't even have to tether it into my PC. I can connect it to my PC and decide that I want to connect that way and not have it tethered. So there was the first watches that had to be tethered to, not hardwire tethered, but Bluetooth tethered to your cell phone. Now they're completely autonomous. So it's just a progression of technology that will get to a point where it's normal to have haptic feedback toys that Bluetooth to your headset, and all of them do that. But now it's rare. So I think it's coming. I think everyone is starting to work. Everyone's sort of seeing in that direction. But we can't aimlessly push in that direction for all these connections without having that foundation, because the metaverse isn't just 3D worlds. If you think it's just a whole bunch of 3D worlds, then you haven't been inside. If you start spending a lot of time inside what these worlds are, it's an extension of the world that we physically live in. We make friendships, we make connections. I've attended weddings, I've attended funerals. We just recently had a horrible situation happen in one of our Altspace communities where somebody suddenly died and had a heart attack, and nobody had a connection to her other than in the VR space. And somebody finally found a way through Facebook and Discord and found out through family members that she had passed away. And it sent a ripple through VR of how much we realized we need to have more than just this avatar tentative connection. And people were grieving and we were close to her. And it made us realize that it's not a game, it's life. It's very, very, very much life. And so we need to treat it that way. And that's why I say the principles of Burning Man and the 7 core attributes as a foundation that we build the metaverse on, the interoperability and OpenXR and the APIs and the programming. If that's all it is to you, is just programming and how we're going to do it, then you're missing the humanity part of what the metaverse can be.
I think we're seeing something like that right now, in the sense that if you have a family member who dies, let's say of COVID, my mom has COVID right now, and it's not safe to travel around the country to go to a funeral. But you could do something virtually if people were able to do that. For example, if you had something that was platform agnostic and they could use their phones or whatever and get together, that would be great. And there'd be a lot less pressure to, fly around the country to get together, which is a dangerous thing right now. If you look at the, I've been comparing the statistics of the county that I live in with the county where my mom lives in, which is, I'm in California, she's in Michigan. And one of the interesting things is that all of these cases, this explosion of cases of Omicron came 3 days after Christmas. And so that was sort of, a huge event in terms of spreading the virus. If we could have instead just had virtual Christmases where we didn't have to get together physically, that could have saved a lot of problems. But we don't really have so much of that infrastructure yet. We've got some of it, and we're using some of it right now for this talk, but I think that's an important thing. So I think you've really touched upon something that's worthwhile.
And even beyond COVID, the carbon footprint of an entire globe flying everywhere for every possible reason you can think of, and then getting in a car and driving somewhere and then renting a hotel. I don't want to shut down the industry, but Homo sapiens has a wicked carbon footprint on this planet, and being able to connect virtually, it's not touching. I'll give you that. I miss physical hugs. I don't think I've been physically hugged in months, and I miss it, but having the people, your pod of people that you can be around physically, and then extending to a grander global community virtually, I think is actually going to be better for our planet as a whole.
Yeah.
And right now, all we have that works across everything is WebXR. WebXR and Web3 are really the most interoperable that we have as far as working across the various clients, but it's not interconnected across the different walled gardens. We're getting there.
I was really going to ask about gas prices, and you just brought it up.
Yeah.
Aren't we going to have some pushback from these enormous companies?
All of them. We're going to have pushback, and at the same time, they're going to be building their own little verse. It's going to happen together. I mean, I've definitely, because Big Rock Creative is platform agnostic. We're content creators. We can build any brand's content on any platform, and some brands we're putting across various platforms with the hope that someday we'll be able to bridge those platforms, but those platforms aren't bridgeable at the moment. But this is already what Big Rock Creative is doing. And we've had some brands come to us that I've been a little like, oh, I don't want them. But no one is going to be able to not be part of it. You know, like, look at the internet. When you start a company now, today, you have an idea. Oh my God, I want to do this thing. I'm going to start a blog and I'm going to call it blah, blah, blah. What's the first thing you do? The very first thing you do when you come up with an idea, right? You got it. You buy the domain name. Now, 10 years ago, just 10 years ago, what was the very first thing you did when you came up with an idea for a company? You told your friends, you looked at the idea, you maybe mapped it out. You come up with an idea right now, the very first thing you do is you look to see if the domain is taken, and if it's not, you buy it, and then you figure out your business. The metaverse is going to be like that in 10 years. So secure your domains now. But what that domain is different. 20 years ago, people were like, I don't know that I want to build a website. It's complicated. Now you build your own website. There's all sorts of tools for building WordPress and Wix, and oh my God, there's so many of them. And the metaverse is going to be like that. Those tools are being built. I know Microsoft has something that they're going to be releasing this year. Niantic just announced Lightship, which is their AR tools. Facebook's Horizon, Meta's Horizon. It's going to take me forever to change and call them Meta. Plus, there's like 5 other technology companies or something like that called Meta. So, but their Horizon platform has these built-in tools. Of course, you can't take them anywhere and use them anywhere else, but there's going to be tool sets, and there's Unity and there's Unreal, and there's like 3 other platforms that I don't remember the name of, but you can build, and I love Unity Unreal for this one reason. You can build in Unity and you can export it in a way that works in Unreal. You can build in Unreal and you can export your package in a way where it'll work in Unity. And it's because they use the same files. They use the same type of file. Maybe the metaverse comes down to agreeing to types of files. Most of what Big Rock Creative builds is in Unity, because most of the VR platforms we work with are Unity based, but more and more Unreal platforms are coming up. But we're finding that most of what's happening with Unreal is in Hollywood, all the VR production, and man, it is gorgeous, gorgeous. So maybe that's the direction it goes. I don't know.
I think we're on the verge right now. If you say to someone, think about what your life was like before smartphones, it's really hard to think of that, you know, because it seems like it's been with us so much, and it seems like so long, but it really hasn't been that long. I think we're on the verge right now, within the next maybe 2 years or so, of a similar thing happening with augmented reality, where like Apple is going to drop its products on the market. People think they're going to crush everyone else. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I don't see why we should walk around with this little display that we have to keep in our pockets and drag out and drop on the ground and try to read the tiny lettering on and so forth, when we could have an augmented reality display that's essentially all around us, and we just turn our head to look at a different part of the display. I think that's what's going to become the common way that we interface with things. There's also these technologies where you have like a watch band, and it will be able to interpret your finger movements. So that will be your interaction with the displays and so forth. So I think we're on the verge of that kind of thing happening, where once it happens, when you say, oh, imagine what your life was like before that happened, you say, I can't imagine it. So I think that's all coming.
I agree. I can't imagine not having all the knowledge in the world in my pocket.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. And this computer is more powerful than what took us to the moon.
Oh yeah, what took us to the moon was nothing.
Which was like, Yeah, I know, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. What's on Voyager right now that's still like speeding out into space? And there's like 2 guys at Jet Propulsion Laboratories that are monitoring the data coming back from Voyager.
Yeah,
That's a DOS-based program.
yeah, yeah. It's ancient technology.
It's ancient technology. And I agree with you. I mean, AR, what Apple's going to drop this year, what Microsoft's dropping this year, what Niantic is dropping, like there's a bunch of shit coming in 2022. By this time, 2023, we could have the same conversation 1 year from now, and we would all just be rolling and laughing.
Yeah,
This is changing so fast. That's why my message is let's grab onto these principles,
yeah,
because the technology has the ability to take us to that dystopian future. We have to consciously make sure that we steer it in the direction we want. The technology is going, we're all going to create all the things we saw in sci-fi movies that we want, but we need to steer it in the direction we want it to go. And that's going to take a collective consciousness.
I think the technology developments are happening at an exponentially increasing rate right now. I know there was a program that I used to use a lot in graduate school, for example, and in my work as well, called Mathematica. And the guy, Stephen Wolfram, who developed Mathematica, he apparently has just figured out something that Einstein spent almost his entire life trying to figure out, and that is a unified field theory. And there's a disconnect between Einstein's theory of relativity and the world of quantum physics. And Wolfram appears to have found the connection between those 2 things. And what he's done is he's created sort of a simple set of building blocks that they're like Legos, and you can put them together in different ways to come up with these different theories. And according to what he's found, relativity and quantum mechanics are the same thing, but they're just at different scales. And so who knows what breakthroughs are going to come out of that. At NASA, they've been doing experiments within the past few years where they are able to contract space-time by focusing microwaves of certain frequencies on what's called quantum foam, which is quantum foam is something that exists all around us. It's a series of particles and antiparticles that spontaneously pop into existence. And then they bounce around and annihilate, those particles annihilate each other, the antiparticles and the particles. And it's sort of a energy equilibrium that goes on in space all around us. It's thought perhaps to be what they talk about as dark matter. And it turns out when you look at Stephen Wolfram's work, it's a key thing in this balance of the universe and coming up with this unified field theory. So anyways, there's all kinds of stuff that's developing so quickly. They think that with using that technology of altering space-time and also using it for propulsion, instead of carrying all this fuel that you use as propulsion, you can instead have a small nuclear reactor on your spacecraft and take the particles in the quantum foam and accelerate those using electromagnetic field and use that as propulsion. The people at NASA are saying we may be able to go to Mars in 3 weeks instead of the months or years that it would otherwise take. So everything is accelerating so quickly right now. And like you say, you have to grab a hold of this and try to harness it while you can.
Or get left behind.
Or get left behind. Yeah, I know. I look at my mother, who's 83 years old, and I put her in a VR headset. I went to go visit her, put her in a VR headset. I showed her how to walk around. It's, you know, the eye hand. She never played a video game in her entire life. Like this whole, she uses a pen to type on her phone because doing this, it's just, and I'm terrified of my reaching her age and where the technology is going to be. And I don't want to be in that place, you know, where I don't understand. She doesn't understand. She doesn't understand at all. She didn't have a computer as a child. I had a PC Junior with cartridges, but it, you know, and then I look at my nephews and my nieces, and you know, it's like they're plugged into the matrix. They understand so much. And then I look at my friends, 7 and 8 year old, you know, my nieces and nephews are in their 20s and 30s. And I look at my friends with, you know, 10-year-olds, and they are the matrix. Like they see it all. And, you know, there's this worry. There's a governing body for games, the ESRB, the rating system. And they've rated all VR headsets 13 and over based on unknown, a science that hasn't been researched yet, is the effect of VR on a developing brain. We know that there's an effect of immersive virtual reality for somebody with PTSD, for somebody with irrational phobias, for somebody with mobility problems, either from stroke or from accidents or whatever, and it rewires your brain. So we know that this happens. I know from personal experience. I used to get terrible car sickness and boat sickness, terrible. Like if I had to get in a car, I had to sit in the front seat and I have to stare at the horizon unless I'm driving. And if we're on a windy road and I'm not paying attention, I will puke. It was a given. If I get on a boat, as long as we're moving fast, I'm probably okay. But the minute we stop and we start doing this, I'm going to puke. After about 6 months in VR, flying, and I used to get VR sickness. So you have to work your way up in time. I can spend like 10 hours in VR. Don't ever do that. I have. But I could spend 10 hours in VR and I don't get sick. I get tired, but I don't get sick. I don't get sick in cars and boats anymore either, because my brain has adjusted to motion, no motion, or motion, no motion. That's what VR sickness and motion sickness comes from. Is your body's moving, but your brain is not. Your brain is moving and your body's not. And my body has adjusted at 50 years old. So it's entirely possible. And we're helping people, stroke victims who have lost mobility on their body. They get into a VR headset. They see their hand move in VR. There's a machine that moves their hand. You can check out all this research. It's really fascinating. And all of a sudden, these people are able to actually move their hand, actually make a fist. So there's an ESRB that says VR headsets are 13 and over, period. Do not put your child in a VR headset. I know so many people that are putting 8-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 10-year-olds in a VR headset. And Rec Room is freaking designed for little kids. What are those kids gonna be when they're in their 20s and they've been in VR headsets since they were 6, 7, 8, 9 years old? Are they gonna fly? We're actually gonna have humans that fly because their brains are wired for it, because they know they can do it? I'm totally exaggerating, but I'm just.
They're going to be developers. But how does your mom react to that?
Oh, my mom loved it. So first of all, I took my mom to Burning Man in 2014. She was 75, and she loved Burning Man. She'd never been to a rock concert. I grew up in a conservative household in Texas, and it just wasn't her thing. Symphony, that was her live music. So for her to go to Burning Man, physical Burning Man, was a big deal. And she wanted to see what I was so involved in. And she really thought we created utopia. She loved it, and it gave her hope for humanity. And then she really got into the principles and understood them and why we burn and live our lives like we do. So I wanted to show her BRCvr because I know she loved Burning Man so much. So I had her come on her computer. And that was really hard for her. The arrow keys and the coordination, it's hard for me. You know, the AWS, FV, and how you move with those keys, you use the arrow keys, and that just takes a wicked form of coordination. But she was able to do it. We put stickies on her keyboard, and she liked it, but to her, it felt like a video game. So when I went to go visit her and I put her in the VR headset and I showed her how to move with just her thumbs, and she was walking around, she's slightly mobility impaired. She walks with a walker, and all of a sudden She could sit on her walker, which has wheels, and move her body around and, move around. And she had the sensation that she was running. She had the sensation that that she could fly, but we didn't fly for very long because it made her a little nauseous. And she loved it. She loved being able to connect with me. She loved meeting new people. There's a lot of studies going on right now with bringing seniors into VR spaces, especially those that are shut in, that can't get out, that have mobility problems, that have memory problems. This has been great for reliving old memories to help people that do have memory problems for various different reasons, whether it's a form of dementia or form of Alzheimer's or other reasons. Lots of science happening right now, lots of research happening right now in this space of elder care and VR. I actually have a friend of mine with a company that does it, but she loved it. I wanted to get her own headset and she was afraid of breaking it. So she didn't want to get her own headset and do it on her own. And I'm like, I could be anywhere in the world that we could connect in VR. And she was reticent. She's also terrified of her own computer and her own cell phone. So, because this wasn't technology she grew up with. I take my laptop and I put it under my arm and I go to the coffee shop and I don't think anything of it. And she would never do that.
Yeah, with my mom, we can't get her to turn on her computer. And we're just trying to get her used to the idea of a flip phone right now. So it would be interesting to try to put her into a headset. I don't know if we could do it, but it's an interesting idea.
You'd have to be sitting right next to her.
Yeah.
Get it all set up, get it where you want to be. What I did is I made sure I had a headset and she had a headset. We were in the same room, but within an area, we gave each other space. And we muted ourselves in world because otherwise there's like a 3 to 5 second delay depending on internet signal. And so that gets a little disorienting to hear and then hear and then hear and then hear. And then we walked around the world. But then I did it where she was alone in her apartment and I was at her friend's apartment down the hall. So if she needed me, I could come really quick, but we were in 2 different spaces. And I had friends of mine in as well. So there was a group of us of like 5 people. And we went world hopping. And we went and checked out various different spaces. It was like being at Burning Man. We went to this Burning Man camp. We went roller skating. We went on slides. We went on an art car. We sat around the fire and talked. And she loved it. My mother's a social butterfly. And, for her to be locked in her apartment because of COVID, or losing mobility because she's getting older, it's the hardest thing for her. She loves going to the grocery store, not because she wants to buy anything. She can just have her groceries delivered. She doesn't want to deal with the bags, but she goes at the same time once a week because the same people are there. And there's this woman with the kids and there's that woman and the cashier and she gets to talk to people.
Yeah. My mom.
Walmart built a VR world. And I have to tell you, I hate it. I hate it with every core cell in my body. As a gatherer, I do not go to Walmart to buy things. I do go to Walmart to buy things, but I'm walking around, I'm checking out my berry field, I'm seeing, what the prices are. And oh my God, how are you doing? It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in forever. Yeah, I know. That socializing that happens when you're shopping, you got to make that happen in the metaverse. All these like malls and stores and Walmart. And if you're just going to be a 3D version of Amazon, I'm not interested.
Right. That's interesting. It's what consumers want. We want what's real and authentic. And I'm going back to one of your comments about, first of all, you comment about DOS. Don't you bash DOS? That's what
I'm not. Okay. Voyager is running on DOS.
Yeah.
I did my very first programming in high school on DOS. So I'm not dissing it.
You and I are together on that. But we were also discussing some of the tech with interoperability. I believe both, Athena, you had mentioned it both Unity is open source and Unreal Engine is open source. And it's like this whole thing about the people of Earth want, because the movement, I remember Richard Stallman back in the day, he was one of the leaders of GNU movement and the open source software movement. And he said it's free as in freedom, not necessarily the spec isn't about, you can charge about it, but free as in it's open source and it's there for everyone can contribute. And it's like the metaverse is being built literally, like people are like ding ding. I'm kind of like, I was imagining people with hammers and chisels, and but that's what I think that people want, is we want something that's real and all of us together, and not this one entity who decides all the things.
Plus, open source is transparent. So the software is transparent. Anyone can go look at the source code, and you know that no company has stuck some weird thing in there to take advantage of you, because it's all transparent.
Yep.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do as I travel around Latin America is to go see these grand ruins. There's some amazing pyramids, and just like, you know, that was a time when the entire civilization would come together to build something bigger than themselves. Huge communal effort. And there's mythology and history saying that it was slave labor, like in Egypt. But in Latin America, when you talk to the guides or the local people who have 5,000 years of history, 2,500 years of history, 17,000 years of history of the people in the area, and you talk to them about how is this built, Corral and the ancient ruins of Nazca and Mazatlan and Chichen Itza, and you ask, and they said that everyone did it for the greater good of the whole, that they believed that if they all came together and contributed, the more that they contributed, the more generous they were with their community and contributed to this grander thing, the better their life would be as a whole in this life and in the next one. And that it wasn't slave labor at all. And I mean, you talk about hammer, like they built giant things out of stone. You go to Peru and these stones are like, I mean, the locals, they're like, we don't say it's aliens, but aliens. There's nobody can move those stones. It's ridiculous. But it was coming together, working together, building, you know, Machu Picchu, building Choqquequirao, building Corral, building Tiwanaku. If you look up any of these ruins, you're like, God, how did they do that? They did it because they came together as humanity. Let's come together as humanity and build our next gigantic communal effort that's larger than any of us can do individually. And that's the way I see the metaverse. How do we bridge all these ruins together? Right. Which is also an interesting project that I just had somebody reach out to us and say they want to take the ruins, 3D model them, put them into virtual reality, and tell the story of their country's mythology. I was like, yes, I love that idea.
Yeah, it's also
VR is great for storytelling.
It's a really cool thing, right?
Preserving history.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on, because I think that, like we were talking about cars and carbon, and I think eco-friendly is essential because that's how we live. And, but what about blockchains and the energy that's consumed by the GPU and the CPU? And I think my friend, even like data mining and stuff, my friend mentioned that they didn't necessarily have to design the blockchain where it consumes power, but there might be some blockchains that don't work with power consumption, other mathematical problems that don't require it. But anyway, I mean, what are your thoughts? Because everyone's jumped in on let's suck the power of the world so we can, what's going on there? This almost seems worse than anything. didn't China have to do lights out for a certain point in time? I heard they had to like stop people.
Oh, I didn't hear about that. It's a problem. It's our overconsumption of this planet is a problem. And energy and consuming of energy is consuming the planet. I believe one of the reasons why we're having this pandemic problem is our overconsumption of the planet. The planet is built in such a way that it always wants to be in equilibrium. Life flourishes in equilibrium. And so I grew up on a ranch in Texas, and we had a pond, a cove. And if there were too many frogs in the cove, there would be like a bacteria or a fungus that would come up and it would kill off a bunch of the frogs. It was nasty. But this would happen because the frogs would overbreed and there wouldn't be enough food. And in order for there to be equilibrium, there would be a kill off. And a whole bunch of them would be like an algae or a bacteria or a fungus. Something would come in, would kill off a whole bunch of frogs. And then there would be a form of nature. Normally it was fungus that would come in and it would dissolve all the frogs, and the frogs would then go back into the pond, and there would be all this greenery that would grow, and then it would be lush and beautiful and lots of flowers, and we would go on with life. And then another decade would go by and there would be another kill off. And this equilibrium mechanism of a virus, a bacteria, or a fungi has been happening on this planet since its dawn. I mean, you can see in fossil records and soil records of, this algae bloom and this thing happened and this thing happened, and it's just how the planet comes into equilibrium. So now you have Homo sapiens, and we are consuming the resources on this planet at a rate that isn't sustainable, and all of science has agreed that it's not sustainable. So what is the kill-off for Homo sapien? A virus. We are susceptible to viruses, and viruses mutate really, really, really fast. So we're over-consuming the planet. The planet protects herself by pulling herself back into equilibrium by taking out the thing that's over-consuming. And I don't think we're going to get rid of this virus or any of the viruses until we learn how to live in equilibrium with the planet. And because we're Homo sapien, thinking man, we should be able to do that. And that's coming up with ways of producing energy that are sustainable and ways of which of consuming energy that are sustainable. And we have to do that, or this is just going to get worse. And we're going to have that dystopian future where we're not going to be able to be near each other, and we're going to have to be in our own little personal walled garden, or the minute we step outside, we're going to get sick with something and die. I don't want to live in that level of fear. I refuse to. But we have to come together as humanity and do what's for the greater good of the whole, and that's consuming less resources. And by the way, this is consumption, not just energy, but the glass and the plastic case and all the circuits and all the metal in here and my computer and my VR headset and all the plastics and the camera. It's really depressing when I look at all the stuff that I have and how much I consume.
Although if you, for example, Apple will give you credit for these older products once you stop using them and exchange them for something newer, and they will go ahead and recycle them and strip the valuable elements and so forth that are in the circuitry and reuse the stuff. So there's
how much doesn't get recycled?
You'd have to check with Apple on how much they recycle, but certainly a lot around the world, a lot of products and so forth are going into landfills instead of being recycled. But there is the possibility of recycling these things, and at least they're trying to do that. So give them some credit for that, I guess.
Now, since we don't really know the answer yet to blockchain mining, which is currently using extensive power, is it even feasible to say that maybe oil companies will be capitalizing on all this because they're the ones who can turn fossil fuels to power?
Probably.
I mean,
Well,
And that pretty much guarantees our dystopian future.
That would, yeah, that would affect even more, right? Right now, it's just for certain activities that we need those fossil fuels. And now, but if the metaverse would be really living life.
What we don't have is power management. Our power management system is old, antiquated, and inefficient. And we're going to see more and more problems across the globe with large populated areas not having enough power for their consumption needs. Like what happened to me on Tuesday, where the power grid went down for all of Buenos Aires. That's, you know, that was insane. But they boiled it down. I mean, they said, oh, it was power management. They didn't have the management tools in place for the level of consumption that was going to happen. Our planet's getting warmer. It's going to continue to get warmer. Our climates are going to continue to change. And human beings, we have air conditioning and we want to cool off. We don't want to be sweltering in 104, 105, 106 degree temperatures. So we turn on our AC, and everyone turns on their AC and their computers and their fans and they're running CPUs and they're running all these things. We just don't have the way to manage. We don't have the efficient management tools to manage that type of power consumption. And here it's coal.
Well, here in California, I believe it's this year, it's starting where all new construction has to have solar energy. And also, there are a number of companies, Tesla included, that build battery systems that you can like put in your garage and absorb the energy from the solar system so that you can use it at other times. And you're not supposed to do this, but there are ways to download energy from the grid when it's inexpensive into your battery system and then use it later when it's more expensive. Plus, even cars now are working as batteries for these systems. And so there's some—
in the United States.
In the United States, in California.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very, I mean, California is its own country, seriously.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's still, I think it's something like the 7th largest, you know, if it was its own country, it would be the 7th largest country and the 3rd largest economy in the world, or some crazy, I don't know that statistic. It was some crazy number like that. California is good for that. But I've just spent the last almost 3 years throughout Latin America, and there's like, you know, Mexico City's the 2nd largest or 3rd largest city in the world. And I mean, there's solar in some places, but doing it in California is great. It's a start, but we need to roll it out right now on a global scale.
I wonder if there was like a World Bank that would reserve money for these impoverished countries to implement things like solar, if they're in a good place for it, like Mexico's in a good place for it. Here in California, well, at least in Southern California, we're in a good place for it. So maybe that would help.
Yeah.
Was there a company that's going to be or already is using crypto as their national currency?
Yes, that is El Salvador. They their fiat currency became their rate of inflation in fiat currency was just like sad. So I believe they accepted crypto. Was it El Salvador? I think it was El Salvador. They accepted cryptocurrency as their fiat. I think that's who it was. They're also increasing their grid so that every citizen but I mean, it's a tiny country. Every citizen in El Salvador will have high-speed internet everywhere. They're doing some really great things. They also suffered 2 Category 5 hurricanes back to back that wiped out a massive part, housing and living for a massive part of their population last year. it 2020 or 2021? Oh my God, these 2 years are flowing into each other. I think it happened in 2020. They had 2 back-to-back Category 5 hurricanes that happened in 2020. And in the rebuilding of that infrastructure, they realized that they needed solar power, they needed better energy, more efficient, and they needed to give everyone high-speed internet so that if something like that happened, the people that were in disaster areas would still be connected. And in the process of doing that, they also worked at bringing in, and I don't know if it's all cryptocurrency, I think it might just be Bitcoin as an accepted currency in their country. I feel like I want to look that up. I think that was right. It was like a series of events that happened. But I honestly, the mathematics behind blockchain and energy consumption, and I don't know any of that information. I do find it interesting. There was somebody's crypto's blockchain network is run on geothermal. I remember just reading that article, but I can't remember which one that was.
Will there need to be somewhat more of a convergence of cryptocurrencies, or can we stay in having a 1,000 different currencies, or do you feel like we need to come to a set of like 100?
No. We have a lot of fiat currencies. Every country has its own currency. Some countries use another country's currency, like Panama uses the US dollar. But they actually have their own currency, the Balboa. But most people want the US dollar. Here in Argentina, because the rate of inflation is insanity, most people want US dollars. If you pay for something in US dollars, they're super happy. They keep it like a savings account because they know it'll go up in value, and they really don't want their own currency. I mean, I got here in November and it was like 120 pesos to the dollar, and it's like 210 pesos to the dollar right now. What is that, 2 months? You go to a restaurant and the menu has the prices marked out with new prices on there because of the rate of inflation. It's changing so quickly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I can also think about the fact that we have plenty of currencies right now.
We have lots of currencies. There's just more currencies.
Yeah.
It's just we have every country has its own currency. So now we have corporate currencies instead of, and we've always kind of had currencies. If you think of games like Second Life, you would buy into whatever the Second Life point system was, and then you could buy things. It was like a tokenization, non-fungible token. Call of Duty, you would also buy into the game, so you would have these things, so you could buy more weapons and more things in the game. And so, people think non-fungible tokens are new. They're not new. They've been around in a long time. They've been used in the gaming space. It's how you transfer digital goods from how you purchase it in the game and how you transfer it from one player to another. And it's how you transfer digital goods. Now it's being used for art and unfortunately exploited, and a lot of people don't understand it. And so they're minting this thing that's a non-fungible token, but they don't have a smart contract attached to it. And what they're really only selling is a URL, but they're not actually getting the actual thing. And you're collecting a list of URLs that aren't actually attached to an actual physical thing or a digital good. And there's a lot of craziness happening in the NFT space because people don't understand it. Insane amounts of money are being spent on nothing. And I'm not 100% sure I can gel with digital real estate also. I feel like it's just another rich man's colonization of something else. Like, you can't colonize any more of this planet because the countries that are left are not going to stand for it. And so, you know, it's not like these empires can go and take over that island again. It's just, we have what we have, and we all need to stop trying to kill the other person to take their land. So this is another land grab. And I feel like it's just that, you know, I'm going to make this statement, and I know we're recording, but I don't know how other way to make it. But it feels like just this white Western man land grab, because that's what I see in the digital real estate space. And it's just another form of Western colonization. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't feel good. It doesn't feel good. I'm waiting for somebody to show me a way in which it's good.
Well, if I ever build a VR platform, I'll give you all the land that you want for free. Okay. And you won't have to pay any money for having a presence in my VR world. Imagine that. You can't
Right?
in our VR world unless you pay.
There's a lot of worlds that you can't play or you can't be part of unless you pay for a presence. And I get that the platform, you know, you pay a subscription fee, or I don't even know how many subscriptions I have. You know, just from server space on Google to my subscription to Zoom, my subscription to Spotify, my subscription to SoundCloud, my subscription to, like, I have all these subscriptions, my accounting software, my this, and that's how the software keeps going and improves and has money to sustain itself. And I totally get that that is needed. I don't know how, that's where I come to decommodified spaces. That if we can build these public parks where anyone is allowed to have a presence, and then port those bridges to the paid experiences, and some are more expensive than others, depending on the size and scope of that experience that you're part of. I think they both need to exist, and we need to find balance.
Do you feel that the whole concept of having a metaverse, right, being like an unlimited, potentially is an unlimited space? So the idea of people having like digital real estate, not just having the real estate, but I mean having a limited, creating scarcity out of something where there really isn't scarcity conceptually. Isn't that bizarre? I just thought that.
Completely bizarre. But we do have scarcity. There is scarcity. When you're buying digital land, what you're actually buying is server space.
True.
You're buying code that exists, lines of code that exist on a server space. And that's your digital real estate. And when you go into VR, you see the illusion of what that code looks like, the condo or the house or the island or whatever, and you can make of it whatever you want. But what you're really buying when you're buying digital real estate is the space on that server. And that server is probably somebody else's server. So if I build a platform and I have it living somewhere, it has to live on a server, and maybe it's AWS. And so if I sell you a piece of the digital real estate, what I'm actually doing, if you take this into the physical realm and you think of a big condo building, and I don't necessarily own the land that it's on. I'm leasing the land from the city, and I build this giant condo building, and I sell off the individual condos, and they're paying for the space that I built the whole building on. And the metaverse is the same way. You have a server space on like AWS or Azure or something, and then I'm selling chunks of it for you to use and build on whatever you want. Decentraland is that. Sandbox is that. And so you're paying an exorbitant amount of money. Decentraland, when I first looked at it, was like $5,000 for this square, and you could build anything you want on that square, and that's yours, and that's your server space. Server space is expensive, like seriously expensive. And so the more people that are on your server, the more expensive your server space is. Why is server space so expensive? Well, you got hard drives and you have energy consumption.
Energy.
And so someone has to pay for that. You have to pay for hard drives and energy consumption. And it's not just the energy consumption of the hard drive, you have to cool off that hard drive. So like I once read that Facebook stuck their servers in a bank at the bottom of the ocean because of how hot it is. There's servers that are like up in the Arctic because of how hot these servers get. You know, like I just think of my PC and how hot my computer gets just from a Zoom call. I get on some of these VR platforms and the fan spins up and my computer is generating so much heat. Well, imagine 1 million people all on the same server in the cloud in the same VR space. Now, what do we have? 7 billion people? Okay, so with computers, we're looking at maybe 4 billion people, I'm guessing. I have no idea how many people own computers and VR could possibly get into a VR space. What if we were all on the same server? That's a lot of heat and a lot of energy consumption. Who's going to pay for that? That's how it parcel out, parcel out, parcel out, parcel out, parcel out. And those parcels, that's digital real estate, server space. You want to make money? Get into servers.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that the cost. I mean, of course, there's that cost, right, of doing it. But I was thinking that efficiently, people could redesign how that, how that space or how that server is used, and also people can scale those servers. Of course, it'll cost more, but still the conceptual thing is still there that you could be unlimited. It's that there, but people are creating kind of being like gatekeepers and saying, okay, you can only have this much real estate, or you got to pay a certain amount for it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think was the opposite of what we wanted the metaverse to, or what people want the metaverse to be, is kind of unlimited.
Yeah.
Go.
I guess
think
someone's got to pay for the server space.
I think it
You have
brings
to pay
up,
your electric bill.
I think it brings up a very interesting point that goes along with all this stuff, the NFTs, all of it, is that, if I buy a piece of property, here in the state of California, there's a lot of regulation about it. And a lot of those regulations are designed to protect the buyer. Now, in the metaverse, there are all kinds of things that you could be buying, and you might not necessarily have anything that protects you at all. And it could be that what you're paying a lot of money for isn't really worth anything, or that can evaporate at any second. And there's nothing in place that's going to stop that from happening. Nothing in place that's going to stop you from being scammed. So that's another interesting aspect of this. Is there a way, just as you talk about legal ways for interconnecting people in different systems, is there a way to protect people to a certain extent from being scammed? I mean, you're not talking about a specific government anymore, because it spans the entire globe. And so, that's another slightly scary thing. Is there some way to protect people from getting scammed? Plus, the cryptocurrencies themselves, they're jumping all over the place.
Yeah, they are.
And so you can easily lose a lot of money on something like that, or make a lot of money if you're lucky.
I think the protection comes from within society, within humanity. If you're outside, if you're functioning outside the principles, like I just take up Burning Man as the ecosystem, and there can be really shitty people within the Burning Man community, but we don't actually call them burners because they're not living the principles. If you live within these principles, then you're not going to scam somebody. You're not going to be that asshole. You're not going to, be that jerk that's self-serving that wants to hurt another person. That's why I think the foundation of the principles is super important within the metaverse, because it'll weed out those people. Society can be self-policing very efficiently, actually. We proved it this year at Renegade Burn. where 25, 30,000 people, I don't know the number, went out to the Black Rock Desert and formed a city and self-policed, and they did great. And you don't hear of any theft. Nobody got hurt. Nobody died. There was a little bit of trash. People went back out and cleaned it up. We followed the principles without a governing body. We did great.
I wonder if you could use an open source type of rating system. For example, one of the issues that can crop up, I was looking up a restaurant in Yelp the other day, and they say on Yelp, they say companies cannot pay to have reviews removed. But then I realized that this one restaurant had 200 reviews removed. Maybe they didn't have to pay to have them removed, but they were removed nonetheless. And a lot of them were sort of innocuous things, relatively innocuous things. They said, we've removed these ratings and they don't factor into the overall rating of the restaurant. So what I'm thinking is you don't really want necessarily companies running the rating systems. Maybe you want an open source transparent system running rating systems so that nobody can game these rating systems. And you essentially have that with what you're talking about at Burning Man.
We don't have a rating system at all at Burning Man.
Well, but you have trust that builds up. And if someone was causing a lot of problems, that would come to your attention, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a regional ambassador to Burning Man in Los Angeles, I would have people brought to my attention, like this person is a predator, or this person is a scammer, or this person, whatever. And the way we deal with it is, you know, if it's a legal situation, then you get the police involved. And if it's not a legal situation and they're just being shitty, then it's a conversation. And we have procedures in place on how to have that conversation. We actually call it FLAME. And it was designed by the Black Rock Rangers, which is a volunteer community liaison group, kind of like our Boy Scouts. And it's just having a conversation. And you quickly can tell through having a conversation, and this is true in all of our relationships in life, is that if you're having a difficulty with someone and you sit down and have a conversation with them, you quickly can discover whether this person is a danger, seeking attention, or just completely misunderstood. And it tends to be those three categories. Almost every time there's been someone that we've been having a problem with in the community. They're either a danger to the community, which means they don't understand right and wrong, and they have some sort of problem, disorder. They are just being misunderstood, and their intentions are actually good, but they're being interpreted the wrong way. Or they are seeking attention, and they're doing it in a way that they're getting attention for negative behaviors, for bad behaviors, but they're still getting attention and they don't care. And that's just comes from their upbringing. And you can point their efforts and their energy in a different direction. You know, much like I talked about, if as long as we have this foundation of the principles, we can take this energy of building all of this technology, we have to steer it. You can do that with people. I've done this time and time again, where somebody was, you know, they just wanted to be paid attention to, and so they're being really shitty to the person that they're with, or they're dating, or their community, or their friends, and we can't figure out why. And we sit down and talk to them and sort of get the sense of like, oh wait, you just want to be heard. You just want to be heard. You want to be part of the whole. Oh look, you have this really cool organizational skill. Huh? Okay. Oh wait, you know how to weld? Well, let's get you on this project. Now, not only are you being heard, but you're a part of the whole, and they turn into this awesome human being like that because they have community. Lots of times bad behavior comes from being outside of a community and you don't know how to get in. So you start punching at the wall, trying to get in to be part of a community. As human beings, as Homo sapiens, as Homo erectus, we survive in community. We're tribe, we're tribal creatures, we're herd creatures. And if we don't have a herd, we will fight to get into one or die. But if they're dangerous, they're dangerous. Like if they're dangerous, there's nothing you can really do about that. Like we have serial killers and mass murderers, and you're not going to change them. They're dangerous.
So you have a way of establishing trust within the community.
There's a system.
You have a system for doing that. And there are, isolated places that have systems for establishing trust. Like Amazon, they've got their reviews. Although at Amazon, there can be problems. For example, a company can pay to have people give them positive reviews and so forth.
That happens on Yelp too. In fact, it happens on any place that has a reviewing system.
Yes.
They'll find people, and I'll give you $5 if you write this review. And then you got people that will write 50 reviews in a day and make a living doing that.
Or 1,000
It happens
likes
when,
on,
yeah,
1,000 likes on Instagram or something like
exactly.
that.
You can buy those, and that's why I don't think rating systems work at all. They somewhat do. I've read some reviews on Amazon that were hilarious. There's some products on Amazon. I'm sure you've seen the memes of them that are just hilarious. People write really funny reviews on certain products. But, I don't, for products, sure, rating systems work. For building community, I don't think rating systems work. I think accountability works. I think community accountability works. I think principles that tell you, that describe what it means to be part of this community. Like I said, the principles describe us, they don't define us. And so you describe what it means to be part of this community. If you can do these things, then you can be part of this community. People want, in an instinctive level, to be part of a community. They might feel like this is the community they want to be part of, and therefore they do these things, and therefore they are part of the community. It's a recipe of how to join. And I think we can build out the metaverse in this way. And there can be different types of communities with different types of foundational principles. And as long as you can do these things, you can be part of the metaverse. That's my goal.
It's an interesting challenge, I think.
It is. And we have a system in place for, it's not policing, but there's really no other word for it. We called it flaming because we use this technique called flame, and the FLAME stands for words that are escaping my brain right now. And it's a way to approach a problem between two community members. The metaverse allows people to have individual presence. So you can't think of us as end users because we're not, we're individuals. And if two individuals are having a problem, there's a way in which of doing conflict resolution between those people. There's also a way of doing conflict resolution between an individual and a community. And there's a way of doing conflict resolution between two communities. And they're tried and true techniques that can get plugged into the fabric of the metaverse. I don't want to think of the metaverse as programming. I don't want to think of the metaverse as a system of platforms. It's a way in which society can be uplifted into humanity. It's what we can evolve to. We can use the metaverse as a tool to bring us all together. And we can put these systems in place that allow us to have this conflict resolution. And what do we do with the dangerous people is an ongoing question that we've had within society, Homo sapiens, and society as a whole. I don't have the answer to that. I got my degree in college in criminal justice. I specialized in studying serial killers and mass murderers because I found their brain to be super fascinating. There is something off. And it's not even a nature nurture thing. It's literally, it can happen at birth. There is something off. There is a disorder, and sometimes they get pleasure from the pain that they caused. Sometimes They just don't have a sense of right and wrong. That taking another life is not okay. They're like, why is that not okay? I don't understand why that's not okay. So there are people, and just because you're in an avatar, you're still your consciousness. There's still this physical being. You know, we're on a Zoom call, but there's still this physical being, and this physical being is embodied in an avatar. And it's so funny to hear people say like, oh, there's a problem in the metaverse with trolls and molesting, and there's all these articles coming out now because women are being abused in the metaverse, in these virtual spaces, and what are we going to do about it? And I just want to like throw up my hands and be like, seriously, you notice now? Like, this has been going on. It's an ongoing problem. Doesn't matter whether we're physical and digital. It has to do with us taking responsibility and putting a foundational fabric in place so that we all understand how to be together.
Yep.
As individuals, be together. And I think the metaverse, the building of the metaverse, the creation of the metaverse, which is what we're doing now, gives us this incredible opportunity to put that system in place so we can learn how to be together.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can build the culture now so that hopefully it sustains, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the metaverse culture.
If we build the world we want,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe we can learn from it, and our physical world can mirror it, can be mapped from it, that we can all be better physically because we're better virtually. But we need to practice being better virtually, and putting a system in place gives us that roadmap to practice with, and then we can be better that way. It comes down to a simple thing that this is my soapbox, is that I believe that we can evolve from society to humanity. And what does it mean to be, society is a bunch of Homo sapiens. Humanity is a bunch of human beings. And we like to call ourselves human beings, but we're really not. I mean, what does it mean to be a human being? I mean, the word is very simple. And it's almost so simple that we don't realize it. It means that we're humane. We're humane beings. A group of humane beings is humanity. So we need to learn how to be humane. And that's a conscious choice. Our instincts, we're competitive, evil creatures that want nothing more than to be better. Grass is always greener. Got to get this next thing. All advertising and propaganda tells you that there's something wrong with you and therefore you need this thing in order to be better. That's feeding into our instincts of being better and always competing. But if we use our prefrontal cortex, this gift that we've been given, conscious thought, our empathy and our compassion, and be humane beings, then as humanity, we uplift all of us as a global entity. And that's the next level of evolution.
And it's the irony of virtual is helping us get back into touch with humanity, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, even the empathy machine, right? VR is called that empathy machine of presence and all that. And you can do experiments like VR embodiment and stuff like that. So we can end up understanding one another more. So it's funny that it's called virtual, yet it's in a real sense real. It's
virtual reality. There's still the reality.
There we go.
And I don't like calling the physical world IRL. I think we need to stop doing that, because the virtual is just as real. It's real life. There are people living in virtual states. It's physical and digital. That's if you want to, we have the virtual reality, we have our physical reality, but they're all reality. Our brain doesn't see it any differently, whether we're a cartoon or not.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Athena, for, your wonderful speech and amazing, like discussion after your presentation. And I really think that you bring up a really good concept that, actually we are human, right? And virtual reality is also, probably the extension of our humanity. Yeah. And I remember Elon Musk said that it's harder to change the school system than, colonize Mars. So I would say that change humanity or make us, make our current society good is really hard. Yeah. So, but we are trying, right? And we see a lot of problems about our current, I would say, internet, a lot of stuff. We've already had a lot of abusing stuff happening. It's not the first state that appear, right? And in metaverse, also we will extend our problems to that if we don't solve right now. So yeah, I really appreciate that, today, like Athena, like bring, like open our eyes for the real metaverse actually is just an extension of our actual human beings to, to a different form in digital world. But at the end, we need to go back to our core, our human, right? To make a better metaverse. Yeah, thank you. And I think it's about the time to say goodbye. I really think that today's discussion is amazing. And yeah, sure. So thank you, Athena. And hopefully, hopefully see everyone next Saturday. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, this is a great discussion. Thanks, everyone. I put
Thanks.
my LinkedIn in the chat.
Thank
If you
you.
guys want to continue the conversation, send me a LinkedIn connection request. And this is a topic near and dear to my heart, and I'm happy to continue the conversation. And Big Rock Creative is looking at building our own platform. Maybe it will be the decommodified joined space. So if you're interested in that fun ride as well, then reach out.
It's great. Thank you so much. This was
Yeah,
great.
thank you. Then see you next Saturday. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.